Pains 50 days now to the election. From alleged Raila Odinga incitement of a land to IBC's ballot paper tender controversy, we look at the issues on the campaign trail for the two major political formations. Talk to us. The hashtag is Gameplan 2017. You can also text us on 22422. We speak to political analysts Haman Manyora, Barack Moluka, Gabriel Muduma, and Jennifer Shamala. Thank you all for making time for us. Tonight, first, what has been happening? The Director of Public Prosecutions yesterday and other agencies, and we had Interior Cabinet Secretary Nkaiseri again today telling NCC to speed up the process. That is in investigating Raila Odinga for alleged incitement. Odinga insists he was talking about poverty and historical injustices, that his comments were taken out of context. Again, issues of land in this election. Are we about to witness land become an agenda in the election going forward?
Thank you, Hussein. First of all, starting with land. Land has always been an issue in the story of this country, right from 1903 when Charles Eliot came to this country as the British Council alienated land. Land became an issue in the 1920s, in the 1940s, 1950s, up to the point that when we are getting independence in 1963, land was an issue. You know about the 1 million acre land fund, and a matter which has been muffled under the cover of history. Land will always be an issue until the questions of historical injustices are squarely confronted. And I think we cannot tiptoe around issues and feel shy, especially at election time. What we need to do is to talk about these things with sobriety, but we cannot tiptoe away from them stealthily past them. We can't.
And we've seen Jubilee talking about what they've done in terms of land, that is issuing title deeds. They say they've done this more than any other government since independence.
That is tokenism, Hussein. That is tokenism. They have not gotten to the root of the matter.
Right. Either way, that's Jubilee and what they're doing in the campaigns. Odinga, on the other hand, what he did in Kajiado, talking about land, he's saying, of course, his comments were taken out of context, but that is now for investigative agencies to determine. But what is he trying to do in the campaigns? What is he trying to do for his supporters, or in trying to get the presidency? Shamal.
I think it's interesting that, you know, 3 months ago to the day, we had Governor Nanok talk about resources and minerals, and that they wouldn't have a situation whereby people could just think and come and they would get their oil. And if you recall, the president reacted very strongly on his comments. And you fast forward to the comments that were made in Kajiado, and it's a matter of deep concern for Kenyans, and it should be a matter of deep concern for Kenyans when we begin to see a situation where there is the devolution was one of the things that has been most celebrated and accepted by Kenyans. But when we start getting to a situation where we are beginning to see the ethnicization of counties, then there is a reason for worry. And in my personal opinion, I think it's important that we do not cause, it's so emotive. Imagine if people were to say, for whatever reasons, that we're going to, when we are talking about it, we're talking about private land rights, and we're to say that you cannot buy land, outsiders cannot buy land in Mombasa. The bulk of, you know, there are lots of upcountry people who actually work and live in Mombasa. So I think that it's a matter that we have to tread on very carefully and be very, very sensitive, because we would be planting seeds of discord. And we have to be careful. And definitely it is an election agenda. It's becoming an election agenda. And it's unfortunate. Yes, and was it?
Do you think it was?
I don't think to the extent that it has now become prior to this. And if indeed we're talking about definitely issues of community rights, and it's something that the Constitution itself and the people of Kenya realized was an issue. And that's why they set up the Truth, Justice and Reconciliation Commission. That is why we today have the Land Rights Community Act, you know, to ensure the protection of communities and their land. The land that belongs to communities at large. So I think that we have to be a bit more sensitive, even as politicians and as Kenyans, when we discuss these issues.
I think there are a number of issues here, Stan. One, land is the issue in this country. We've always skirted around it. Until such a time we solve the issue of land, the Kenyan problem will remain around for a while. You see, there are two candidates in this election. There is Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga. Uhuru Kenyatta has instruments of power. Being the President of the Republic of Kenya, he can do something about land. So when he goes to a place where he knows he can use his office to gain political mileage, then he issues title deeds. Baraka Muruka says it's tokenism. I might want to agree with him, but for now, let me not go beyond that. What does Raila do? He doesn't have the power to issue title deeds or do anything. So when he goes to a place where land is an issue like Kajiado, he's likely to say a thing or two. So this is expected. And I think it is not something you can quite easily, conclusively talk about and say this guy is wrong, but that's it.
Gabriel?
Thank you, Hussein. Let me first of all agree with my good friend Barak what he said, that the issue of land is not only sensitive, but it needs sober leaders to be able to discuss it, find ways around it. But also, at the end of the day, I think it is one area that we should not run to with a political mindset. Why I'm saying this is that we've had administrations back to back, some of whom have tried dealing with the land issue. To an extent, they've probably, just scratched the surface. Some have not been able. And we have seen what Barak is calling tokenism, where people are issued with title deeds. I don't think I can really bring it down to tokenism. You've had people who've actually, for a very, very long time, brought it to the fore that we would like to, at the very least, know that we own this land. And that's why people in Mombasa were kept calling on the presidency. Not only, I think, President Uhuru Kenyatta, also during the Kibaki era, they were saying, tupatie vyeti vya kumiliki mashamba. At least, when we are buried, we know that somebody is being buried in their own land, that they hold it, that somebody can go to a bank, get a loan, have an element of an economic sustenance in their own land. So I wouldn't call it tokenism, but at the end of the day, the agreement that I have with Barak is that people should discuss this issue soberly. I find it very awkward that we can talk about it today as an avenue where somebody can hold a microphone and just verbalize matters land, as sensitive as it is in parts of this nation, knowing fully well that land is captured in our constitution in chapter 4, where it says you can own. Me and you, Hussein, we can, our rights in the Bill of Rights,
I think
we can own land everywhere. We can own land everywhere we wish. We can go and buy land. We can invest. So when you talk about land being a sensitive issue, it must be backed by what people have called on through history, the sanctity of the title deed. So it's
Hussein, I want to say this. We have said land is sensitive. It's a very emotive issue, especially given our history. We know where we came from. We know why people fought and died.
Right.
And we know that we haven't done much about it. And that's why Barak is saying when you scratch on the surface, you can only call it tokenism, because the issue is still there, intact, waiting to be sorted out. What I want to say on this show is this. I don't think somebody like Raila Odinga could be accused of turning this land issue, into a campaign issue by merely mentioning what he did, because Barak, Hussein and Barak and the rest of these people on this table, if somebody were to want to make land a campaign issue, this country could go on fire.
Do you agree with that?
Yes, I think it cannot be escalated beyond the present, beyond saying that it is a big issue and that it needs to be addressed soberly in the coming days.
All right. Another talking point during the week, of course, the IBC ballot paper tender. NASA claims it was awarded through influence from State House. Again, Jubilee MPs and Jubilee accusing Raila, counterclaims that Raila had this company, Pearl Media, that's lost out of the tender, and they wanted to have that tender initially, that is back in 2016. First, what do you think this does to the IEBC? I think we talked about this earlier, but what do you think does to the IEBC? Barak.
Last week when we were here, we observed that the IEBC needs to build confidence with the citizenry. You see, these things eventually are not going to be a matter of who is saying the truth and who is not. It's going to be a matter of perceptions. Sometimes, and I don't wish that this happens, but sometimes it's also true that you may have an election that is not free and fair, but it's seen to be free and fair. It's better than when you have an election that is free and fair and it's not seen to be free and fair. For the post-election dispensation, the IBC will need to manage this. And I've said time and again here that whenever issues are labeled against IBC, we have got a binary situation where the political opposition is throwing barbs at the IBC and the government is hugging the IBC. And I think that those who are hugging the IBC do it more harm than good. The
government is saying don't put undue pressure on IBC.
They are almost treating them as if the IBC was their poodle. That they do not even allow the IBC the opportunity to come out and speak for themselves. That is bad, that is dangerous. Jubilee should be advised that they should speak for themselves. It is not for them to say that these things which are being leveled against us, they should not even say which are being leveled against IBC, leveled against us, that we met somebody and that we are trying to influence the award of this tender are not
IBC,
true. But
right.
once they say that leave the IBC alone, the IBC is doing a good job, they're hugging the IBC, they're doing more harm than good.
Talking about poodles, it's almost as if NASA, you know the expression, the dog is wagging the tail, it's NASA is wagging the IEBC. I say this because in December 2016, then CORD filed an application in court to have the procurement process nullified.
Yeah.
And indeed, we fast forward, I think, to February, and it was nullified.
Yeah.
But interestingly enough, within that application, one of the interested parties was this South African company. They're called PAL. And one of the prayers that CORD asked for was in support of PAL. They were prosecuting the case, and that's a fact. They were prosecuting the case for PAL and saying that the orders that had been given before the review board, the ruling that they had appealed, the entire procurement process, the outcome, be dismissed. So they're prosecuting the case on behalf of PAL. So obviously there is a connection between PAL and CORD. That has not come out in the public.
That's
now,
your interpretation.
yes. No, it's not my it is a fact that there is a connection between, it's not my interpretation. There are interested party, and it is CORD who is praying for the court to grant orders that would benefit PAL. That is not my interpretation, PAL Media. Fast forward to now, we hear that the people met with them in Dubai in 2016, early 2016, that the head of this Al Ghuraib was here. Why weren't all these matters canvassed in December 2016 when they went to court? Why are we going one step at a time? We sort out one issue, because I think the correct thing would have been is to canvass all these issues in one particular application. Right. Because we have to take into consideration that there is a time aspect. So those are the questions I would ask. I don't think Jubilee is cuddling them or trying to support IEBC.
Okay, Barak.
You see, this ballot paper, there are a number of issues I see. One is that definitely some stench coming from around this ballot. You can't deny that. Even matters of simple integrity. When a farm has been cited in high courts and associated with some kind of not so clean dealings, and the tender has been awarded, under normal circumstances, in civilized society, you wouldn't expect the same farm to be given in a single sourcing manner. You know, it raises issues, but that's not the problem. The problem is, as Kenyans, why are we being like, I was something like, vita vya hasira ya panzi furaha ya mvuvi, vita vya nini
ya panzi furaha ya
kunguru, hasira ya mkizi furaha ya mvuvi. You see, people are exploiting us because we are stupid. What is so serious about printing a ballot paper? A ballot paper, you give foreigners 2.5 billion, money you could use to pay nurses, people are dying. Look here. You mean we can't print ballot papers in this country? These are simple things, but we don't trust ourselves. We don't have confidence in ourselves. We have built this artificial dichotomies, societal differences that are not even there, and others are exploiting us for that, and therefore we are having some Dubai men just take a paper like this and say Uhuru is here, Raila is here, Tiki here, and you're giving all this money when you are only people are dying.
But for the
listen,
record,
let me finish.
they were not cited.
Let me finish.
It was the IEBC, not them.
A ballot paper is not currency. It's not money. This is just something you can use for voting. Let's move beyond that. However,
no, but she has
for the record,
a point.
Olga Rabe were never cited in that. The
ruling
was
it was about IBC
it was
and
the
procedures.
mandate of IEBC and procedures.
Yeah.
And secondly, they didn't go to single sourcing; they went to a restricted tendering.
Okay. Listen, Jennifer. You know we live in this country.
No, those are facts.
What I'm saying are facts. And you see, the saying that Caesar's wife must be beyond reproach. It is a matter of integrity that when your name features in certain manner about certain things, even the best thing to do is to withdraw. This is how it happens. This is why these developed countries are where they are.
You see, I don't speak for either PAL
and for the record, it's important to say that PAL has denied this, IBC has denied this, Al Ghurair has denied this. And what you're saying is
I'm making a very simple point that issues surrounding these ballot papers are such that in a civilized society, that company may not be given. But that's not the point I'm really interested in.
But the point, but the question I was asking, Haman is, I mean, some have said the accuser should provide evidence here.
Exactly.
The thing is, if NASA have said IBC has done ABCD and colluded with Jubilee and Ghurair and State House links, shouldn't they provide evidence? Then the same way, Haman, the same way, the counter narrative can be argued. If Jubilee are claiming PAL was working with NASA to get this deal and it has not been, can they provide evidence? And so my question, that is why I was asking, what does this do to IBC and integrity going to the election?
That's the point I was making. I was saying, once somebody or a firm has been mentioned in a manner in which these two firms have been mentioned, you do the right thing, which is either exclude them, or because of the shortage of time and because of the sensitivity of the issue as we approach elections, you call the interested parties, and in 2 hours time or less, you solve that issue in a simple manner. Okay. But I haven't made my point. Allow me to make the point. Very briefly, I want to say this, that I'm advising NASA. When there is an election, show me the complaining party and I will show you the losing party. NASA should not keep on pushing some of these things. In an election, there are always deals on the table and under the table. You play politics, you know that there's no clean election. Even when you see the white smoke at the Vatican, if you read about the literature surrounding the Vatican, you'll see issues. In America, we saw issues. So elections always have issues. Finally, I'm advising NASA. If they push so hard and they have this election postponed, they'll be playing in the hands of Jubilee. Between NASA and Jubilee, who would benefit from a postponement of the election? I inform you on this table, Jubilee will do anything possible to have this election postponed, because it is them more than anybody else who can lose
You're really taking us to another topic altogether. But I mean, I have to challenge him on that. I don't know why you're saying that.
But I'm only saying, I'm only hoping that he doesn't dare me.
No, but why are you saying that? Why are you saying Jubilee will benefit? We saw President Kenyatta, I think that was 3 days ago, saying the election will not be postponed.
Now let me answer your question, but quickly again. 2-3 weeks ago, I said Jubilee was around 52%, around 48, NASA 52. I want to say here now, as the way I understand this country, as a man who loves this country, I'm telling you NASA is around 55.
Based on what?
And hustling, listen, okay. I hope Jubilee is listening and don't bash me like they did last time. And hustling towards 60.
When
that time comes, Gabriel, when that time comes, panic will set in Jubilee.
What happens if an election is not held on the 8th of August? This country must go to the formation of a caretaker government. So who would benefit? Everyone benefits. You cannot say that only one side benefits, because in a caretaker government you have to bring everybody on board.
Who says it will be a caretaker government?
Because that's what will it be? Everything stands dissolved.
But there will be an election at some point.
at some point.
Yes.
But
We are
prior
really
to that
speculating whether the election will be held or not.
Yeah, prior to that election, there's a setup of a caretaker government. Caretaker governments are set in place, one, when a government loses its confidence, and second, when a government stands
They can
dissolved.
be no caretaker.
Okay,
I think we've totally
can only
jumped
postpone
off the
an election.
bandwagon.
Okay,
they will be.
Let's
IBC,
take
and I think we've
yeah.
taken
Yeah.
a serious deviation. Well, I think when you talk about IBC, number one, if I have 2 points. Number one, I think IBC must own the process. This issue of having political parties meddle with the affairs of IBC, as much as we are talking about political parties being stakeholders, Kenyans are also represented, and actually a big percentage of me and you, the voter, we are represented by IBC. So we also need to be heard, and heard very clearly. The point number two, and I think, Hussein, this is where I would agree with my friend, even though he's talking about numbers. That's fuzzy, those are fuzzy numbers, and I think there's no logic behind it. But what I would push across when you're talking about things like ballot papers, I'm agreeing with him. What is really the element that should hold us back from, printing ballot papers locally? We have a company here in Ruaraka called Delaru, right? Why can't we actually give it, the stance to print these ballot papers? Okay. Why must we go outside to print this thing? I mean, we are talking about employment, and giving this nation the latitude for them to do these things. Why can't we trust Kenyans? Why can't we trust ourselves to run a process? I told you the other day, if we are talking about the credibility of the process, it must suffice by us. You saw a country like the Gambia removing a dictator from power using marbles. Okay. All right, we are talking about the sophisticates of technology.
Right.
Yet we still cannot get a simple papers. I think.
Okay, let me get Bara to finish up on this.
I think it boils down to the one issue of perception and of credibility. And if we are talking about perception and credibility, both Paul and Al Ghurair seem to be cast in a very dubitable environment just now. And we must ask ourselves, do we look like we have perceptions that everything is okay? And the answer for me is that it doesn't seem so.
So you don't think Al Ghurair should continue
either way
with this process, or either way?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. IBC, of course, says they have to go on with that with Al Ghurair. Finally, tomorrow, the National Super Alliance was now, because we just got that they've postponed, but was supposed to launch their presidential manifesto. We got that Jubilee was supposed to be Wednesdays, but we still haven't got a confirmation on that. How important, or first, what do you think, or whose content do you think should be, I mean, how does one get the edge over the other in terms of content of manifesto? And number two, do these manifestos really matter to the voter at the end of the day? Harman, I'll start with you.
What we call manifesto here is not a manifesto. In fact, from the time of the Second Liberation, 1992, if you look at the literature that people call, there's no manifesto. Apart from SDP, that then fronted Charity Ngilu in 1997 and Orenga, I think, thereafter. All these parties don't even understand what a manifesto is. A manifesto must be informed by some philosophy. Our aching philosophy of life, and what you think the society ought to look like and where it ought to be. So we don't really have manifestos. And to answer your question, really, kama baba amesoma katiba, kila mtu amesoma. So even this manifesto, they mean nothing to the voter. What, however, the political parties will do, forget about a manifesto, because they can't write a manifesto. They can't come up with a manifesto. What they would have done is a campaign platform. In other words, you isolate about 3, 4, 5 things at most. In America, it's about foreign policy, it's about trade, it's about the military, such. So you isolate 3, 4 items and then concentrate on them as your campaign platform.
Although now, you've said several times that will not work. You've said
I'm saying, and I'm coming there. Because they have been unable to do that, what they come up with doesn't work. If, however, somebody came up with a campaign platform, and it must be a narrative that counters another narrative. To the extent that Jubilee and NASA are the same, you can't expect anything out of this. Okay. Yeah. Because if NASA were to come up with a campaign platform, they would say things that will shake this country. They will say things that will have Jubilee sit up in the chair and vote.
And Jubilee as
yeah,
well.
for example, you just isolate something like...
Okay.
You know, it's so interesting when you look at all these politicians. Kenya is a unique country. It has the unique distinction of where the opposition and the government and everybody have served in the same governments at one time or the other. So my brother Herman is talking about platforms. They've said they're coming up with some pillars, yes? A Marshall food plan, a Marshall plan for food. What is there new that they're going to tell us? Because if I was going to write the manifesto for them, I would be like, what is the new thing you're going to do? All of you have been in government. And come up with a 7-point pillar and say, this is the new thing. And why didn't I achieve this thing when I was in government? What were the reasons? Because that is what I would ask any politician today who's writing a manifesto. Yeah.
You know, you were in government, it was somebody else's government. It wasn't your government. It was someone else's party, and you just happened to have been there. I think we need to debunk that myth that you have been in government for so many years. And governments come and go.
This is now in reference to who?
People scatter. In reference to the notion that these people have been in government, what are they going to tell us?
It's a fact, isn't it?
It's a fact that they have been in government.
Yes, but it is expressed as a notion that because you've been in government, and we have even been given some sham arithmetic that therefore so many many years.
But Barack, it's a fact that it's a fact that Kalonzo Musyoka was the vice president. But it's also a fact that William Ruto was the
minister. Yes, of course. And I've said that. I've said everybody. It's a unique.
Hussein, I try to be a good listener when I'm here.
Okay.
I try to listen to my colleagues. Now, when we talk about these manifestos, I agree with Herman Manyora. There is going to be no manifesto. At the very best, we'll have some statements of intent. And those statements of intent do not matter to the voting public, because already there are people who know that they are going to vote for Uhuru Kenyatta. There are people who know that they are going to vote for Raila Odinga. And it doesn't matter what kinds of promissory notes you come up with and tell the people we will.
So, what do you think this matters for them?
They are not even going to ask Uhuru Kenyatta that the last time you told us you are going to do these things, why haven't you fulfilled the following things? A manifesto should be something that gives us the opportunity to decide between one of the contestants and the other one. Now, in this particular case, it will not. It's just a decoration, something extra that...
Why do you think they do it then?
Because
if you're saying it doesn't matter ultimately.
Because it's fashionable.
For non-Kenyans, I think.
Okay.
Not for just Kenyans.
To me, when you talk about a manifesto, it would almost emulate what you call a promissory note. And Barack is right to an extent to say that you may have people who are questioning the Jubilee government. You said you would do 1, 2, 3, you haven't done. And probably those who will be looking from the onset will be saying, well, you said you would do 1, 2, 3, you've achieved 1, 2, 3. Probably Jubilee will be begging, give us time probably to do 1, 2, 3. Now, I think where the powers of an incumbent, my good friend, comes in, it's in the creation of something like a manifesto. You have one government who are looking to extend their term and one that's looking to come in. So what comes to play, and the advantage that you hear many people saying the powers of an incumbent actually comes to in a time like this, because you're looking at a government, the government of the day, saying we are doing, versus an opposition that's saying we will do. But more than anything, I'd like to see, because I've seen what Jubilee has, I'd like to see what NASA would come up with, justifiably so, by the very same things they've been
castigating. You want to give them a chance?
Hang on a minute. No. I'm saying I would like to see what their manifesto will look like, because of this very few things you say. Number one, they've said if we come in, you had in Kajiado on the video, there are some things we'll do about the land issue. I would really like to hear that. Number two, when we come in, we would cancel all the projects that you're doing. I would really like to hear that.
The look at education.
I would really like to hear that, because I don't know how west or how east you can go unless you tell me you have a morbid desire to send this country back to the factory reset.
Okay. We'll have to end it up there.
We are winding up there, but we are saying this, and I keep repeating this. There are no manifestos here. There is no development here, and if there was, it won't matter. There can only be politics, And I'm asking you because you speak for Jubilee.
Oh my
to tell them to play politics because the way I'm seeing the things going, I don't want them to get into panic mode.
Who said you have to allow me to answer?
Yeah, you have to respond to that.
I have to respond very quickly. First of all, I don't hold brief for Jubilee like my good friend is saying. But at the end of the day, I think we've agreed, we've sat down here, we've talked and we've expounded on issues. But Hussein, I don't want us to lose sight on one thing. We've talked about land, IEBC, things that actually are drivers of this nation. Yet somewhere along the road, you'll all agree with me that one key element called peace is getting eroded. I'm glad he's shaking his head. Peace, Hussein, peace, Barak, is not an independent variable. It's a dependent one.
Yes.
In that it must get fixed. Hang on a minute. It must find its place among the constellation of virtues, whereby you're talking about goodwill, love for humanity. It must make to come. Peace does not appear as an angel.
And I think
the more we
most
talk about
importantly,
land, you know,
when we talk about peace, we also must talk about tolerance. And the
Exactly.
tolerance is that
agree.
people have a right to vote, and people have a right. People have a right.
The biggest predicate.
I think, but the biggest thing is people have a right to have opinions, and people have a right to support whatever party they want to support.
But
to then take
the biggest predicate
victory
for peace is justice and fairness. In fact, when you have a free, just, and fair society, it will invariably be a peaceful society.
And we want peace.
We'll have to leave it there. We'll have to leave it there. But thank you so much, Barak Muluka, Gabriel Muduma, Jennifer Shamala, and Hamna Manyara for making time for us tonight. Keep talking to us. The hashtag is GamePlan2017 on Twitter. You can text us on 22422. We're back after this break.